Good morning, everybody. My name is the Sobre Boys Wanifatse from the Big R. As you know that the Big R, we discuss a number of issues. I know that some of you might now be aware that we are a financial company doing a number of financial issues, largely being, education. I'm a key proponent of education, that if you want to unlock the potential of the people, we need to invest in education. So we educate. So there are many ways of educating. We've written books which explain personal management, finance and business finance. And we also, conduct interviews with successful business people so that they can relate their journey. We also discuss with a lot of people, stakeholders in the industry, especially of finance, so that we understand exactly what's happening. You cannot do that without involving labor. Labor is very, very important. And I must say, I'm really, really honored that I have the Chief Director, Labor Relations in the Office of the Minister of Labor. This is a very huge department. The government is the biggest employer, so it's a very important stakeholder. Mr. Mkalipi was not obliged to be part of this, but as a civil servant, he felt he needs to be part of this so that we explain some of the issues. If you remember quite well, last week we had an interview with Mabuto Kitsitole, who's an actor, an activist, who raised a number of issues, which I think it's not issues only for him, it's issues for him and other people in their industry. And then, of course, we then said, we need to ask the Department of Labor, and we'll continue to ask other departments, relevant departments like Department of Arts and Culture, but the sector that they find themselves in, cut across. Now, let me welcome Mr. Mkalipi to the show. Mr. Mkalipi, welcome to the show.
Good morning and good morning to you both.
Okay. Mr. Mkalipi, before I can go any further, if I may ask, who's Mr. Mkalipi? Where does he come from? What qualification does he have? What experience does he have, so that people can understand that I'm not just talking to somebody that I pick up in the street, or the department has just given me somebody in the office there. Who's Mr. Mkalipi, if you don't mind to share that?
Well, I'm a chief director in the Department of Labor Relations. I had the section dealing with employment equity, labor relations, basic conditions of employment. I'm a lead negotiator for government at NEDLEC in all the changes in the labor legislation that have taken place over the last 10 years. Been the lead negotiator in those changes. I've got masters in labor law in terms of qualification, and that's what I.
Yeah. So you were in the labor movement in terms of experience, or what?
Yes, I was in the labor movement. I was starting from the 80s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
I was in the labor movement in the Eastern Cape, and in one of the federations before FOSATO at that stage.
FOSATO, yes.
And then the formation of COSATO was part of the founders of COSATO in the province, and even acting nationally. Therefore, spent a lot more than 10 years in the labor movement.
In the labor movement. So you've got a vast experience, because experience is very, very important. And then you and the minister come a long way, because the minister also was the general secretary for South African Democratic Teachers Union for quite some time. He was my chairperson at some point here in Tembisa before he went to the national office. That's what I wanted to to introduce to the viewers out there. Viewers, we know that actors, musicians, people in the arts industry, they complain, that when they happen to die, collection must be made for them to be buried and so on. And they complain that their government does not show up. They show up during the time when there is a burial. But those are the allegations, okay, which cannot be elevated to facts. But now we need to ask people involved. Mr. Mkalipi, firstly, I would like to know, what is the purpose and the vision of the Department of Labor when it comes to labor issues?
Well, the department is the custodian of labor issues in the country. And if you look at the number of legislation that the department has introduced to deal with fair labor practice in the labor market and then social security, the department play in the space of social security, in the space of fair labor practice. And those are the areas, it's our business to ensure that all workers work under conditions that are legal, constitutional, and fair. And that's why we've introduced the number of legislation that we've introduced in the labor market to ensure that.
Now, one may ask, as I was saying earlier on, this was motivated by the discussion that I had with Mabuto Stoll. I'm sure you know him. At some point, he was leading a union of the artists. I can't remember what was the union at some point. And I don't know what happened to that. What the department, how do you view the entertainment practitioners? Do you view them as laborers or you view them as what?
Well, it's not what the department views anybody as what. I mean, the department, remember in this country, we got a constitution. The rule of law is paramount. We've got laws that indicate what is the status. Now, our law, the Labor Relations Act, indicate who's an employee and who's not an employee. Now, in the art industry, I mean, it's a vast industry. There are areas that are clear-cut where there's an employer and employee relationship. If you look on people who act in theater, they are employed by a theater company. They are employees of that theater company. But if you look at musicians, I mean, would you say Letambuli is employed? They are self-employed. They produce their own music. They sell their own music through third parties, sometimes directly. And you look at artists now, actors basically. Therefore, we should not paint this industry as one similar industry. There are differences. There are those where there's no issue. Remember, as I've said, in our law, for labor legislation to apply, there's got to be an employer-employee relationship. And if there's no employer-employee relationship, then you are regarded as either a business person on your own, you're running your own business, you are an independent contractor running your own business, and then you are not employed by anybody. Therefore, you can't claim unfairness. If somebody does not pay your dues on the basis of the contract that you've had, it's just like a company entering a contract with another company. If the other company doesn't pay, they can't claim unfairness in terms of labor law. They go to court, they sue for what they are owed between two companies. But if there's an employer and employer relationship, therefore, what I'm trying to say is that in this industry, you've got situation where employees are clear-cut employees. You've got situation where there's the relationship is blurred.
There's some ambiguity.
Yes, for example, for actors. And then we understand this. We've had a meeting with actors to deal with this issue. And wanting to deem them as employees. Now the actors themselves say to us, look, if you deem us as employees, what happens to our tax regime? Because if you're a company, there's a favorable tax arrangement then as an employee. Now you can't have it both ways. You can't be an employee and a business person. You can't want to have an advantage of a tax regime of a business person and then still have an advantage of an employee as an employee. You can't have both ways. Now, in the discussion that we have, because we wanted to deem them as employees, now the companies businesses that deal in this space, the MTN, MultiChoice, SABC, all of them, they kick to dust on this issue. They don't want actors to be declared as employees, but actors themselves were not that eager because they are worried about the tax, losing their tax benefit that they might have when they've got business. Now, we left that discussion with them saying, okay, go out, negotiate among yourselves. What we can do, we can see whether can we publish what you've negotiated, either as a sectoral determination or as a regulation for the minister so that it's applicable to all actors. But it doesn't affect the whole industry. Specifically, it was for actors. It excluded musicians. Remember also in the same industry, you've got sports people, rugby, soccer, who've got their own union, who negotiate on their basis. And the other issue is, as you ask a question, what happened to the union that was led by Keith Stolle? That union was deregistered. Remember, if you form up a union, there are requirements that you need to meet. And also, when the union failed to meet that requirement, then the registrar is compelled by law to deregister it. The union then was deregistered. But there are two issues for me in this issue. First, the workers, the people who are in this space, if they regard themselves as workers, they must make that decision first themselves. And if they do that, then they've got to organize themselves. It's not going to be government that organize the sector into an organization, whether you call it a trade union, whether you call it an association. Because government does not have a role to organize people into a grouping. Them themselves, if the cons hit you in your feet, then you are the person who must stand up and do the organization. Now, for them to negotiate and organize, they need to do that. There are organizations that exist, trade unions that organize some of these workers into working arrangement. But this issue that if they regard themselves that they must be treated differently than other workers, we don't go out and organize mine workers for mine workers. Mine workers organize themselves. Government didn't go out and organize teachers into a union. Teachers organize themselves. Therefore, the same should apply here. If they want to deal with this issue, this noise that they make that government is failing us. Government is failing us. When you wait for government can pass legislation. If you do not take the responsibility, the rights that are there in law and use them, government is not going to be able to support you. Therefore, as I've said, we started this process of where we wanted to deem the workers in the acting industry who are acting as employees as a first step. They have not come back to us on this issue themselves. And the other part is that even the organization that exists, they don't have the numbers for them to be able to if you go to overseas, North America, look on the organization that represent this industry. workers, people who work in this industry are members of those organizations. They form this organization, and those organizations represent them. You go to Europe, the same applies. For this industry to improve, people in this industry have got to form those organizations so that they can organize and negotiate with themselves. As government, we can set up legislation that supports that process, but we can't negotiate for them.
No, it's true. It's true, because if you organize them, you become conflicted. Because at some point, you must come in as a referee. So you can't be a referee and a player. Now, I want you have touched on a number of issues which I want you to elaborate on. One, the tax benefits that they want to benefit, because one of my questions was, are they paying tax? That's one. And then which benefits they wanted to benefit vis-a-vis the benefits, vis-a-vis the tax that is being paid by the employees. That's one aspect. The other aspect that I would like to know, you said that union, which was led by Mr. Kit Sithole or Mabuto Sithole, it was deregistered because it could not fulfill the requirements. Maybe not going specifically which requirement they do not meet. If you can give us the requirements that they should meet, all right, so that as they are listening out there, they are able to pick up and understand to say, oh, these are the requirements that we should meet, and they start working on. So if you can just give us tabulation that these are the requirements that they should meet, and then so that they understand that from now on, remember Brakid now, I think he's at your age, if I'm not mistaken. So there are new ones that are coming. So they need to start learning, because we are educating to start saying, you need to organize yourself, but these are the requirements that we have to meet. But you have to choose, because having said what you said, because if you remember the nature of their work, sometimes they'll work and then come after 6 months. Whereas an employee is there every day. So how do you quantify their work if they don't come every day? That's one thing that they should answer at some point. Sometimes they have, like you said, they have a contractual arrangement with, let's say, a production house, which says, guys, I'll give you a contract for 3 months or 6 months. And then you can have a worker-employer relationship in that relationship, because you are guided by that contract. And that contract is not limited only to the contract, also the budgetary constraints. Sometimes those production houses or the broadcasting house, they said, hey, due to budget, we need to cut. So those are some of the things that play a role. I want you to come in on those issues that are raised.
Well, the first issue, let's deal with the issue of requirements for registration.
Yeah.
Registration is a ticket. Just like if you're gonna form a company, you must register your company. Not even for tax purposes this stage, you must register it, and with the DTI, the organization that registers companies. And it gives you a certificate to operate. That's what registration is about. When you are registered, you've got a right to collect SARS money from workers, because all organizations, you go to a church, for it to succeed, it must have resources. And that resources money is collected by way of subscription from the people who are members of this organization. The certificate gives you that authority that you can then ask companies to deduct money from people who are your members, send it to you. That's the first thing. Now, if you've got then that certificate to collect to do this business, the law requires you on an annual basis to submit annual audited financial statement. That's the area that union failed on, providing audited financial statement on the money that they collect from society, that they are collecting as a result of the certificate that they received. All unions that exist, if you're a union that will exist, you collect funds from society, from the public. You've got to account how you use those funds. And if you are able to do that, then there's no fear of deregistration if you're able to account. Now, there are two issues. When you account, we look at whether the money was used properly. It could be that I'm a general secretary and I collect money, and 90% of the money that is collected goes to me as a salary. And we look at those issues, say, but you can't. This can't be. This is for the benefit of the workers and the organization. If you're collecting money and 90% of the money is getting paid out as a salary, how is the organization being funded then on other activities that support the workers? And that's what auditors' financial statements tells us. And the union couldn't do that. The other issue, all other compliance with reporting are simple. The most important one, which organizations sometimes struggle to meet, is that one. I mean, even organizations in the farming domestic sector, there are many trade unions. There's no trade union in the domestic sector. They were trade unions, they were deregistered on this exact issue of accounting on the money that you collect.
Before you go in for the chief director, sorry. The other thing that I wanted to find out, the number, the quota, the number, should they meet a certain number of membership? I want to know whether that is also part of the requirements.
No, not really, not really. There's no requirement to meet the number. The number is dependent on the sector that you're in. For example, I'm going to give you two examples. If you organize in the mining sector, the chances are that we are going to say to you, you must at least have 30% of the workers in the mining sector, because in the mining sector, there's a history of organization. Unions have been existing for years. And many of the unions are staying in one area. Some of them in the old days were staying in hostels. Therefore, it's easier to organize in those areas. But when you organizing in the domestic sector, we know in the domestic sector, there's no history of trade unions. And it's difficult to organize. It's even difficult to go into, I can't come into your house as a trade unionist to organize a domestic sector worker that you have employed, because there are security issues. And the house, there's a constitutional provision that is private property. You can't just, and it's not public property. Therefore, it's not easy to organize in the domestic sector. Therefore, the numbers in the domestic sector will be far lower to form a union than they are in, as I've said, in the mining sector.
The mining sector, yeah.
Yes, the law doesn't say what the numbers, what is important, what's reasonable.
Okay.
And then the same would apply in this sector. The numbers are not going to be an issue. But then the numbers help the organization to get funding, because the union is funded by money taken from its own members. If the money is not enough, it's not going to be able to carry the union forward. But the numbers for registration, there's no fixed numbers. It would all depend on the sector that you are in, the history of that sector, the history of organization in that sector.
Okay. Yeah, because, you know, the big R stands for all the positive R words in English, such as reading, research, responsibility, relationship, resilience. And I hear you are touching on a number of those things, that people should start taking responsibility. Unlike standing there and complaining, take responsibility, organize yourselves, and then take responsibility in accounting as far as financial reporting is concerned, which reporting is another R word. and then if they fight for their rights. As we're having that interview, Mr. Mabuto was saying there was a bargaining council at some point for this sector, but it was not well represented. I don't know whether you can attest to that, or there is another version that you want to give. Look, here I don't want to create unnecessary debates. The idea, I'm just trying to clarify the ambiguities for the government and also the practitioners in the entertainment industry, so that they understand from now that, oh, what are the requirements. That is why I was asking, what are the requirements for them to have a registered union, to have that certificate so that they can operate. And you have eloquently put those issues up front. I hope they've taken notes. So yeah, I want you to hear from your perspective whether it was a misunderstanding, whether the bargaining council was in there. He said it was there, but it was not well represented. If I remember quite well, in terms of our interview, said the employers were not well represented. They would come up with people from, the shops, the ordinary independent shops, as people, not really employers like your big structures like SABC, MultiChoice, and then government and so on and so on. So can you just come in as far as that is concerned?
No, he's making a big mistake. There's never been a bargaining council in this sector.
Yeah.
Remember, bargaining council can only be formed if you've got a trade union operating in that sector, and employers has got employer organization that represent them. And then those two parties form a bargaining council. It's not formed by government, it's formed by employers organizations and trade unions coming together, registered. You must have registered trade union and registered employer organization. And then they request for a registration of a bargaining council. They don't request a formation, they form it themselves. They don't need to get permission to anybody to form a bargaining council. They form a bargaining council and then they apply for registration. Just like you form a company, then you apply for registration of that company. The same apply with the bargaining council.
Just like the labor union, as you said.
Just like a labor union. The only difference here is that it's formed by an employer organization and a trade union, an employee organization, and then they operate on those bases. The law gives them then that license to operate, and then whatever they agree on can be law on its own. The minister can publish it as secondary legislation, and when the minister publish what they agree on, then it's applicable to everybody in that sector, even if they are not party to that sector.
Mr. Mkalipi, I would like to know this. I'm sure you know as much as I know, and as much as the practitioners in the industry know. These members of the society, let me put it that way, for lack of better word, trying to encompass everybody. These members of society, we know that they get 3 months contract, 6 months contract. The longest I think is 3-year contract. And that on its own makes it difficult for them to get like mortgage bond, vehicle finance, all right? Or any other credit, because the credit industry view them as a risk. Now, you as government, have you ever thought of probably as government coming together with the business sector, probably, especially the banks, to say, guys, you are playing a major role in our economy, I mean the banks, and here are a marginalized group who can't get all this. And then remember, these people are in the public eye. Pressure is too much. So that is why some of them, they end up getting frustrated, being depressed. That's not the issue that they raise. I'm just asking, there's any role that the government can play in mobilizing the business sector, not only the banks, to say, be considerate when you deal with this. Now, talking to you as a labor guru who's got a lot of experience, master's degree in management of labor, I don't know. What's your take on this?
Again, I'm going to come back on the statement that I've made.
Yeah.
I think this sector has got to stand up also on its own and fight for what they believe is right. First, as I've said, we can't reinvent the wheel. There's international practice, best practice on this situation. All other industries also in other countries operate on the same basis. You get money when you get work, you don't get money when you don't have work in the same industry. Therefore, let's not reinvent the wheel on those areas. Secondly, the people that work, I mean, you've got people who are working as part-time, who work, what's the terminology? Seasonal workers, who work through seasons, who got a pay slip, who pay unemployment insurance when they work. You've got a big industry of people who get paid on commission on the basis of the work that they do. If they don't produce the work, they don't get commission. Now, I'm using these examples, the international experience, this example that this issue with the will of the people concerned. I mean, what's the difference between a plumber who gets work when he's called to do plumbing and an artist or an electrician? Same position. You get money when you've got work. If you don't have work, you're not going to get the money. And therefore, I don't think this is a real problem. And those people get a bank, they get bonds. You can show that you've got income over a period. For me, as I've said, the issue is that the workers in this industry have got also to stand up, and not always. This industry is not as big as it's big in America, in Europe, here. But the issue is that for the side of labor, for us to be able to give them the same right as other workers, that discussion in the direction, as I've said, we started this process, we would want to finalize it. There are ways of dealing with this. But what I don't want the people in this sector to think that they are an exception. They are the only one working under these conditions. There are many workers, as I've said, I've given an example of workers in this country who work under the same similar conditions, who get paid on the basis of whether they've done the work that they needed to do. I've used example of seasonal workers that work per season, but they belong to trade unions, they are organized, they are represented, they can, in those sectors, they can fight for their rights. And for me, if we approach it on those bases and then say, how can then government, these are the issues. And as I've said, we said in the actors who are working under the same situation, we said we are prepared to deem you as employees. And if we deem them as employees, they will be entitled to UIF, deduction and payment. And that payment will only be made by them when they get income. When they don't income, they're not going to make any payment. They are going to only make payment when they get income. Obviously, their coverage also will be based on their contribution. You are in the financial sector. If you buy insurance And if you don't pay for a specific period, that product, you're not going to get coverage for the time that you're not getting paid. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your coverage will end because you do not get paid. You can build a product that suit the circumstances that they are in. The issue is that if there's enough numbers, critical numbers, as part of that product, then it makes it financially viable for both the organization that supply it and the workers themselves. The issue that I'm raising is, for me, is that as the Department of Labor, obviously, we don't play in the space of financial products. We deal with the issues of the labor market. In the labor market, we want to solve some of these problems, but we can do that only if the parties also come to the party, especially the workers themselves. We've said in the meeting that we had, even if the employers, the other party, the owners of these big production companies don't come to the party, if what we're putting on the table and we're publishing it is reasonable, we'll be able to give it a stamp of authority in terms of the law. And that's what we can do.
Because the other thing, I don't know whether we see, I'm happy because you made an example of in America, the industry speak. We see this industry as contributing positively to the economy in a way of advertising the economy, the country. For instance, I'll give an example, because I think in the same boat we have sports people, as you said earlier on. The mere fact that we had a soccer World Cup, a lot of people became aware of South Africa. And we could not have a soccer World Cup in South Africa had those, Abo Presa, Elokshin, who were forming these boys to play football, the forerunners, contributed in ensuring that boys play football, entertain people, and then we become the member of FIFA and so on. And we are now known that there is soccer and football, there is cricket in South Africa, there is cricket in South Africa, there is rugby in South Africa, and then we can host all these youth tournaments. And then that is why our kids here, they look at Americans, they want to like Jay-Z, all those people, because the marketing behind those people is huge. I don't know whether, I know that's not your space per se. I don't know whether do we see them from that perspective as people who can contribute positively. Because if they advertise the country, people who love to come to this country, and then coming to this country will make us to attract good talents outside, And that is why I was making an example of the soccer scenario or cricket scenario. Everybody watch the Champions League in Europe because we know the kind of football that is being played. And these are our players moving from Africa going there. So do you guys view them as people who can help in terms of marketing the country? That's the question. If you have an answer to that one, you can answer it. You're not obliged to answer it. I don't know. That's how I think they should be treated, as people that could be used positively to market the country for the country to be known.
This is an industry. All industries play a part and add to the growth of the GDP of this country. All industry, apart from even the issue of marketing, as an industry, it's playing its part. When you look at the industry as a whole, it's playing in this part in the development of the economy of this country, and we wouldn't want to lose any part of that industry, of any industry. Therefore, for us, we see it as an industry that is important, just like other industries that are important in developing this economically, this country. Whether that's done through marketing whether that's run to marketing internationally, overseas, bringing in tourists in the country, bringing in more people and bringing in investment. But it is a sector that is as important as any other sector that plays in the economic situation, environment.
Now, I'm sure we are all aware that the whole world has just been hit by this pandemic. And the people who are really, really suffering are entertainers. Here I'm referring to musicians who get their money by going to gigs and so on. So they have come to a stage whereby, you know, that has stopped completely, almost completely, not complete, almost completely. And then as a result, there is no income. You know, they're fighting for survival. I know the Department of Labor, I think you are managing the payment of people who are supposed to assist the small business. And I must say, while I'm still talking to you, thanks to you guys, we're assisted as a company to help our employees, although it has stopped now. Probably let me just find out, why has it stopped, this relief? Let me start there, not necessarily the actors. I've already asked, because I want to know what help are they going to get, these musical artists. But let me find out. The relief seems to have stopped now, I think, for a while.
Well, I mean, the relief has stopped because the relief, remember, was given on the basis of the status that we're in of lockdown level 4, with all the regulation that prevented people to do business. But it has not stopped altogether, because for those businesses that were part of the process that were not operation and still could not operate, there's been assistance on those. And even for those businesses that are affected by the unrest in KZN and Gauteng, there will be assistance on those. Therefore, it's not entirely stopped, but it's been targeted to those particular business that were affected at that particular time. It's not open to every business that was not affected. Therefore, that's what has happened. Now, it's only open now as we speak to those that are affected by what happened KZN and Johannesburg.
But
now,
okay, Chief.
On the question that you're raising about the fact that musicians are not performing because everything is closed. Well, I mean, I'm not going to be able to speak on that, but workers in those sectors who are, as remember, I indicated that the working arrangement, if there's a worker and employee relationship, and you pay unemployment insurance fund, that's how you get assistance. And therefore, workers working in this industry, workers who work for venues that organize this, continue getting assistance. Now, until we resolve this issue of employer-employee, as a department, we can only pay workers that are within the unemployment insurance ambit, who contribute to that. That's what the law is. We can't go outside that because the law doesn't allow us. Because they are not the only people that are affected with this. People who are, I mean, many people, poor people who are selling oranges and apple in the street couldn't sell those oranges from level 4 level up to level 2 because there was no movement. People are not moving, and even the taxi ranks were empty. Now, should UIF be paying for them? Are they different from musicians? Therefore, for us, from when we're sitting, it's not only musicians who are in this space. There are many other people who are in the same situation who have not earned an income because of the nature of the work that they're involved in.
On that issue, you have touched on something very, very important. I know a lot of taxi guys who have been complaining that since they were promised and today they have not yet received a cent. They are still struggling. Where is the bottleneck? Where is the problem?
Yep, but remember, from our side, we did not help you. We help your workers through your organization.
Yeah.
As a Department of Labor, we help workers. If workers are not getting an income, we come in to make sure that they get income. Any other assistance that must be given to an organization as a company, it's the tax incentive that are given by SARS and the Department of Treasury that reduces tax and do all of the. From our side, we can only assist the workers, the income of workers. Now, if you're talking about the taxi,
yes,
if
who have drivers,
if the taxi pays unemployment insurance, that's the problem with the taxi industry.
Okay.
The taxi industry must make a choice because these things are still going to come. It's not the end of it. The law requires that they must be registered with unemployment insurance. They must pay unemployment insurance. Now, any taxi owner that has registered with unemployment insurance, registered their employees should get assistance just like your workers are getting assistance. If they don't comply with the law, I'm sure you will agree with us. Why should you comply with the law and they don't comply with the law and they expect to get assistance like you? That's the problem in the taxi industry. Now, I can't talk about the other funding that they were promised as owners of business. But as employees, if the employees are registered with unemployment insurance, they got the right to claim just like any other company.
I think that is quite clear. And then especially on the issue of the entertainment guys, I think one of the messages that I got clear, you are saying the onus is with them to organize themselves. Let me ask this question. We have the Football Federation. Then you have the actors and so on. Can't, due to numbers, the two structure match, or it's bad, every sector, it must be on its own? I just want clarity for the sake of them to understand. If they are soccer people, they'll have their union or sector, and then rugby, same thing, actors, same thing.
As you know, as a business person, you decide what business you should be in. If you want to be in the mining sector, financial sector, transport sector, that's your business. No government can tell you, no, you can't. The same apply with unions. Nobody can tell unions you can have a union that is only in this industry. If you look at NUMSA, today NUMSA is a general union. It organizes everybody. It organizes metal, it organizes mines, it organizes airways, aviation industry, it organizes everything. Therefore, nothing prevents any union to organize anybody as long as they are workers. I think the problem here is that the union that was organized by kids, it organized all workers. The issue was that some of the workers that they organized, the employer and employee relationship was not as clear as it should be. Therefore, that's the issue that you're going to come up with, is that if you organize, then we can assist. If they come to us and say, we are organized, we've got all of these people, that's why we published the notice trying to deem them as employees for the benefit of the different legislations. And that notice, we hope they are still going to come back and indicate on this, respond on these issues.
I hope this one is going to be the last one. I want you, because the idea is to educate, as I continue to say that, I want you to clarify, make it clear so that they understand, because after this interview, they need to start now thinking vigorously and start to take initiative. because I don't want them to repeat the mistake that were done in the past. If I may ask you to define in simple terms, employer-employee relationship, what does that mean? Does it mean over a period of 2 years, over a period of 3 months, over a period of a month? I want you to clarify, give them pointers to say, in this case, when things are happening this way, this is an employer and employee relationship. But in the case where there is a short-term contract, what is it? I hope you understand my question. And I hope I'm asking the question that they would like to know, because after this interview, we want them to organize themselves to start saying, okay, issues were clarified. So where do we start and how do we go forward?
Well, the principle of an employer and employee relationship is this. I cannot operate outside the Department of Labor and do what the Department of Labor is supposed to do. I depend on me being employed by the Department of Labor. That's what employer-employee relationship. The question that we must ask, can I do what I'm doing? If I'm a musician, can I sing and earn a salary even if there's nobody who's going to pay me money and say, come and sing? Can I do what I'm doing without depending on the tools that are provided by somebody else? Is my time when I do this job controlled? Must I work from this time or to that time? For example, a plumber. There's no employer-employee relationship. When you bring a plumber at your house to fix your pipe, the plumber comes in and fixes the pipe and leave. If you ask a builder to build you a house, you agree with the builder that they must finish this house in 6 months. Whether they start working at 12 or start working at 4 in the afternoon, it's outside your control. You want the house finished in 5 months. Therefore, you don't employ them. They don't have to clock in and say, today I'm in. If they don't want to come in one day, today they are not able to come in because they've got another job somewhere else. They can go out and do that job. You can't do anything about that because they control their time. And that's what employer-employee relationship is, that your existence as an employee does not depend on somebody else as an employer for you to be able to do what you do. And that's what we mean when we talk about employer-employee relationship. I use an example of the people who are working in theater, who are employed by a production company. If that production company does not say, we are going to be running this theater over 5 months, 20 people, they are not going to be acting in that theater without that production company.
I want this example, okay.
But if you compare that with musicians, now, if I want to earn salary as a musician, nothing prevents me, if I've got the money, to organize the hall and advertise and say, I'm going to be singing there. I want people to come in and hear, or sell my own CDs. I can earn an income without depending on anybody else. But it's unlike the people working in theater who depend on a production company. That's where the employer-employee relationship comes in.
Let me further clarify this way. Let me further clarify this way, using your examples. I bring a plumber. I hire a plumber. Chief, let's work 6 months contract. I want you to fix a plumbing job here or build a property. Now, if that builder or a plumber, if that actor start hiring camera people, start hiring lights people, sound people, and then start having that contract between him and those people, can I define the relationship between the plumber and the employees that he employed as an employer and employee relationship? The actor who himself started his own business, but he has hired camera people and all those people as that employer and employee relationship. That's the clarity that I want. Can I?
You're correct.
Yeah.
You're correct. There's no employer-employee relationship between you, the house owner, and the plumber.
Yeah.
But there's an employer and employee relationship between the plumber and the people that work with the plumber to fix your pipe.
Yeah.
Now that's how it works.
And going further, the plumber should also comply with the regulation of Labor Department, like UIF, all those things. That's add to the element of employer-employee relationship. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay. So that's the clarity that I want them to have, because once they have this clarity, at least they'll be knowing from now on what is the way forward. And those, as you have explained explicitly, to say, if I have a contract, I'm a business person. So that will be guided by a business contract. There's no employer and employee relationship. I hope people out there, you understood exactly the explanation that Mr. Mkalipi was trying to give us. And I must say, we are indebted to you, Mr. Mkalipi, for honoring this. We just want to educate our people so that things can start improving going forward. Because sometimes people, when they are pointing fingers there and there, is because some of the issues are not clear enough. So if there are any other questions that I did not ask, you're more than welcome to drop us those questions on our WhatsApp group. You'll see it at the end of the show, and then ask whatever questions. If need be, maybe we can send to Mr. Mkalipi, maybe his officials may answer those questions on your behalf, because Mr. Mkalipi is dealing with a whole lot of issues. The sector is big. Mr. Mkalipi, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.